Again, thank you so much for joining us this evening for part 3 of this incredible series around a very much needed conversation about our country, Haiti. My name is Francesca Menace, and I am one of the co-founders of the Black Collective. The Black Collective is a hyper-local organization based here in South Florida. We are an organization that is focused on power building, base building with our people of the entire African diaspora, understanding that we are not a monolithic group, but like Black means many things to many people, and making sure that we're able to build power to shift the material conditions of our people. I'm going to pivot it over to Tamara, who is our one of our other partner organizations, who will introduce the moderator.
Thank you, Francesca. Good evening and welcome. Coming together is a beginning. Keeping together is progress, and working together is success. A few weeks ago, a group of 8 Haitian-led organizations sought to come as a united force to engage in an insightful, factual, contextual, and collaborative manner around the New York Times recently published articles on Haiti. The series of articles titled Haiti Ransom Project provided a detailed account of the root of Haiti's misery, originating by France's demand of reparations, leading to Haiti's lost billions, and further deterioration by the US occupation. As a collective, we knew that the power of our initiative would be amplified by inviting all of you to this community building forum. The 8 organizations are Haitian Ladies Network, the Black Collective, Centre Haitian Neighborhood Center, Avancer Ensemble, Haitian American Professional Coalition, also known as HAPSI, Aibo Post, Island TV, and the Haitian American Foundation for Democracy. As a co-founder and board member of the Haitian American Foundation for Democracy, also known as HAFD, it is with great pride that I take part in this collaborative and to welcome you to this initiative, an initiative that is aligned with HAFD's fundamental pillar of building power of our transnational community to create holistic, prosperous change for Haitians in Haiti and abroad. This change cannot happen without policy shifts, economic development, and inclusivity. HAFD is committed to leading the charge. As a co-owner of Island TV, I am also proud of the network's participation in this collaborative. Island TV connects the Haitian diaspora with 24-hour programming in Creole, French, and English, streaming free on all major digital platforms. The Ransom, Haiti's Stolen Wealth, a 3-part series of virtual conversations, focuses on increasing our collective understanding of what happened after Haiti became the first Black independent nation in the Western Hemisphere. During our first panel a few weeks ago, we heard from the New York Times journalist that penned the series about France's ransom of Haiti's wealth and the process they took to researching these important stories. The second panel last week focused on reframing our narrative and insisting that we stop repeating that Haiti is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere and challenge ourselves to heal from our losses and lead with passion, conviction, and context. Today, we ask the question, what is next? We should tackle this question as a community. And today's conversation will shed light on the impact of the debt and the occupation, and we will explore the global movement for reparations. So let's get started. Moderating today's important conversation is Vladimir Dutier. Vladimir is a Peabody Award and Emmy Award-winning journalist that has covered a wide range of breaking and feature stories. Vladimir is a CBS News correspondent based in New York. He is part of the team delivering the first look at the day's top stories for CBS Mornings. He also serves as anchor for the CBS News streaming network. His work has been featured on CBS This Morning, the CBS News, CBS Sunday Morning, 48 Hours, and all CBS News platforms. Before CBS News, Duthier was an international correspondent at CNN based in Lagos, Nigeria. His work there was honored with a Peabody Award for his reporting of the more than 200 girls kidnapped from their school in northeastern Nigeria by the Islamic terror group Boko Haram. And as an associate producer for Anderson Cooper 360, he was among the first journalists to arrive in Haiti to cover the 2010 earthquake, and was part of the team that won 2 Emmy Awards for their coverage. Duthier was born and raised in New York, the son of Haitian immigrants. He is fluent in French and Creole. Vladimir, thank you so much for being with us today, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Tamara. It's an honor to be with all of you. It's an honor to take part in this, and I'm honored that you asked me to be a part of it. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to all of you who are joining us this evening to our esteemed panelists who are going to be joining me in this exploration and discussion, not only of this groundbreaking news report that was done by the New York Times, but the discussion will focus itself on where we are now and perhaps even where we might be headed in the years ahead. And so let me go ahead and introduce our panelists to the audience. First up, we have Michel Duvivier Pierre-Louis. Madame Pierre-Louis became the Prime Minister of Haiti in September 2008. And while the Prime Minister, she also served as the Minister of Justice and Public Security. Upon leaving office in November of 2009, Madame Pierre-Louis resumed her activities at the Open Society Foundation's Haiti, which she created back in 1995 under the name Fondation Connaissance et Liberté, otherwise known as FOCAL. She is now FOCAL's president, coordinating special projects in sustainable development, higher education, and national heritage, with a special emphasis on human rights and gender justice. She's also received many, many awards and distinctions in her career. In November 2020, as a member of the Council of Women World Leaders, she received the Women Political Leaders Trailblazer Award at the Reykjavik Global Forum Women's Leader 2020. Welcome.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Jean Casimir. He is a leading scholar of Haitian history and culture. He's a professor at the Faculty of Human Sciences at the University of Haiti, where he teaches courses on culture and society of Haiti and the Caribbean. He received his formal doctoral training in sociology and anthropology at Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, with a particular focus on studies of social change and development. He's held research and teaching positions in Congo, Brazil, and Mexico. Professor Casimir, welcome.
Thank you very much indeed.
Dr. Julianne Malveaux is President Emerita of Bennett College for Women. She's an economist, author, and commentator whose popular writings have appeared in USA Today, Black Issues in Higher Education, Ms. Magazine, Essence Magazine, The Progressive, and many more. She's also a committed activist and a civic leader. And Dr. Malveaux has held many positions in women's civil rights and policy organization, and she currently serves on the boards of the Economic Policy Institute, the Recreation Wish List Committee of Washington, D.C., and the Liberian Education Trust. Dr. Malveaux is also president of Push Excel, the educational branch of the Rainbow Push Coalition. Welcome, Doc.
Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Dr. Amara Enyep, who's a strategist, public policy expert, and social impact professional on city and state policy, as well as international affairs, with a special expertise on Africa, Latin America, and Central Asia. In addition to her role as president of transnational advocacy organization Global Black, she also serves as the manager of policy and research for the Movement for Black Lives, and as a strategy advisor for organizations, companies, political campaigns, and public sector institutions globally. She's a 2021-2022 leader in residence for policy and change with the Atlantic Institute. And Dr. Enyep also serves as the chairwoman of the International Working Group for the United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. And she was named a Public Policy Global Leadership Fellow with the Global Strategists Association. Dr. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm really excited to speak with all of you. And I think for the audience that is just joining us now, because it's not clear that everyone may have attended the previous two forums, I want to do a quick roundtable discussion and just get everyone's thoughts on the New York Times reporting, what it meant to you, what you discussed with your friends, with your family, with your colleagues, with people who are not Haitian. If they came to you with questions, I just want to get a global macro view of the impact that this reporting had. And I will preface that by saying, and I think I said this in the prep session earlier this week, when the reporting came out, some of my friends emailed me, some of my non-Haitian friends emailed me and texted me and said, hey, Vlad, have you seen this story in the New York Times? Wow, I didn't know any of this. This is incredible. This is remarkable. And I read it, obviously. I read it as soon as it came out. But as I was replying to my friends and colleagues, I said, I mean, I know this. I learned it when I was a child from my parents. And it's always been a topic of discussion. It's always been a topic of discussion, even when I became a journalist and I was reporting from Haiti. I would come home and talk to my family and family members about the situation that Haiti found itself in, whether natural or man-made. And inevitably, the discussion would return to the fierce pride in Haiti's revolution, but also the despair at the forced reparations of the enslaved to the slaveholders. And there was a moment when I was on national television a few months ago when I was doing a report on Haiti at the table of our morning show, CBS Mornings, and I just briefly, in less than 60 seconds, explained this whole process, the reparations, and even went into the U.S. occupation of Haiti and the pilfering of the Haitian National Bank, which led to the foundation of Citibank. And my colleague Tony DeCopo, who's a wonderful, highly educated young man, he expressed shock and disbelief that this had ever occurred in Haiti and in the world. And that moment that got clipped kind of went viral around the internet because, and it wasn't so much the focus on Tony, who didn't know, it was sort of like, wow, see, this is the history that people don't know. And so that was how I was affected by this reporting. So let's go around the table, the metaphorical table, if you will, and start with you, Madame Pierre-Louis. What was your impression of the reporting when it came out, and what kinds of discussions did you just hold, interpersonal discussions did you have around it?
Well, first, thank you for your question, but also thank you for having me. I'm very pleased to be part of this panel with very distinguished panelists and my friend Jean Casimir, whom I admire a lot. I was very impressed by the articles. The first thing I did is that I called a friend in New York and I told her, "You're going to buy the five publication of the New York Times for me. When I come to New York, I'll get them." Because I teach at the university and I teach the history of 19th century Haiti. And of course, this is part of it. And our historian called the 19th century the long 19th century because it ends in 1915 with the US occupation. So I was familiar with most of the information that was in the articles. And also what I did with my colleagues at Focal, we had a meeting with the whole staff when that happened. And we told them, have you read the article? You should read the article. Who has read the article? And what are your impressions also? And that was fascinating to see that even among Haitian scholars, students, there are so many parts of these articles, so many interpretations also that are ignored. Haitian history is not well taught in schools, at the universities, although there are many, many books that have been written in the past years on our own history, and that's what I would like to come around with when my next turn of intervention comes, because I think that it's important to know. I know the title of this session is What's Next, but in order to understand what's next, we have to understand what was. And to me, that is the most important part also. What happened after our independence? And this is really the part I want to convey to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Dr. Malvo, what did you think?
Um, Thanks a lot again for having me, for being here. My maternal grandfather was Haitian, so I'm connected some kind of way. I've only been there a couple of times and don't really know him. We've been looking for his roots. Um, in addition to you introduced me as president emerita of Bennett College for Women, but I'm also the dean of the College of Ethnic Studies at Cal State LA. I have Pan African Studies, Chicano Latino Studies, and Asian American Studies reporting to me, and we're building a Department of American Indian Studies. I mention that because we've had several conversations among the faculty about the New York Times article. Even some of our best read scholars don't know the economic history. And I'm an economist, so that's a part. The economic history, what's happened in Haiti, the fact that they had to pay reparations to France when it really should have been the other way around. And the amount of money that was paid, I mean, people just, it's not well known. And so the nature of United States predatory capitalism has had essentially a deleterious impact on the lives of people of color all over the globe, literally all over the globe. So among the other hats I wear, I don't have but one head, but I wear several hats, is a member of the National African American Reparations Commission. And we, of course, have met globally with lots of colleagues to talk about reparations, not only in the United States. We had a meeting about 3 years ago with people from the Caribbean, CARICOM, joining us and talked about who owes what. And so I think it's really important for us to look at Haiti because people are, I think in a prep session, someone said something about Haiti being the poorest, da da da. Well, that poverty is not a function of any deficiency on the part of Haitian people. It's a function of the United States exploitation of a neighbor. Exploitation of a neighbor. And so we've had several conversations about it. And as I said, some of my colleagues who are very, brilliant people who know what they're talking about basically hadn't thought about that part of it. So I thought the New York Times reporting was thorough, it is important, and I think it should be required reading.
Indeed. Professor Enya, I'm going to go to you next, but before we continue, just let me remind our panelists that there is simultaneous translation happening in Creole. And so they've asked that we all speak slowly and clearly so that they can ensure that they capture all of the words that we are saying. And that is important because we want our message and the essence of what we're talking about to be clear to our audience. So just that reminder from the organizers. Dr. Enya, let me go to you and get your impressions. What kind of conversations did you have in the wake of that reporting and subsequent?
Sure, and it's really an honor to share this table with so many esteemed colleagues as well as yourself. To the question, I had a mixed reaction to the series coming out in the New York Times. On the one hand, I was perhaps relieved that such a large platform was finally telling a more thorough story and providing a more well-rounded narrative about Haiti and everything that happened, particularly to Dr. Julian's point on the economic impact of the United States, the exploitation, the extraction that has really been a part of Haiti's history. So I was relieved that finally a platform as large as the New York Times was really making this available to the masses, right? Because it is an understood story. I was also, I think those of us who work in this space perhaps sometimes underestimate just how plain it is, the nature of the dynamics of capitalism, the role that the United States and many other Western nations have played in the ongoing exploitation of the Black world. And so I think it was kind of a shaking up a little bit. Wait, we do still have to tell this story over and over again. And while many of us have heard the narrative and know the backstory, it is important for large platforms also to be honest and to be truthful and to share to share that history broadly. So on the one hand, it was sort of like, finally, I mean, come on, what, why weren't these headlines? Why wasn't this thorough level of reporting done sooner? But it also was a good reminder that we definitely have to expose this history as broadly as possible so that people understand the nature of how Haiti became what it is. And also because it is important to understand how we move forward, both as for Haiti, but for the entire Black world, for the global Black world.
Indeed. And I want to come back to you about one of the points that you made, but let me go to Professor Casimir. I would let the ladies go first, as I was taught as a young man, but Professor, over to you.
Thank you very much. Like my colleague, I must first really thank the collective for these wonderful meetings, no, and the pleasure and honor to be with such distinguished groups. I will not extend myself on what they have said because I share everything they have said. I wanted to point out one element that struck me and that also impacted in Haiti among my friends was the fact that Creole was enthroned. This is very important for us. Now, first of all, as far as I am concerned, the changes that we are living today, start with the upcoming of Creole, our language, into the public sphere. No, and more it is entering the public sphere, more dangerous it is for the establishment, and this is what is going on. So, the New York Times on this ground give us a great hand by enthroning Creole in the international public sphere. The other element is that, in fact, there exists, and the question we have asked, why is it that the New York Times now come with the subject? And we do not want to enter in the problem of the US and France and what they have. That is really of no interest for us. The fact of the matter is that the impact of the paper was particularly important for those of us who live in the border of imperialism and the resistance to imperialism. Our people, the masses, they were mentioned before, they didn't pay much notice of this phenomenon. No, and it is important for us that it happened, but it has not yet penetrate in the masses, even though it was in Creole, because we have two masses. We have the diaspora masses and we have the local masses. So this is what I wanted to point out on the impact of this wonderful reportage. And I will not enter in the bickering between this was published before, it was not published before. I have a book on this and that. I think this is another issue that is not of no interest for our masses. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I should also point out that the article was also translated into French, which again sort of further, gave it more legs, as we say in the news business. In other words, not just to have the article in English, but to also have it in Creole, translated into Creole, and then also into French, which meant that it had an even greater reach on this already massive platform, which is the New York Times. So let's dig into this. One of the things that I think has been sort of fascinating to me in seeing the reaction to this is something that I'm already seeing a couple of comments in the attendees who are commenting as we are having this discussion, which is the notion that the New York Times would put together this very comprehensive report, and that so many people, it was shocking to me how so many people were actually ignorant of just some of the basics. Forget the details that this article went into, which were comprehensive, and I myself, of course, learned some new things. But it has always struck me, especially in this country, the United States, that there are people who claim to know history, who claim to understand their history, who claim to understand the place of the United States in the world order, and have very little understanding. Every day in the news, as all of you know, we talk about Iran, but very few people, if you stop 100 people on the street of New York, you would find very few people who would ever understand or know anything about US foreign policy as it relates to Iran before the Iranian Revolution in 1979. Even though the United States is inexorably tied to whatever is happening in that part of the world. And part of the reasons that that part of the world is the way it is because of US foreign policy. Much in the same way that you have people. I had a friend who is Dominican, who is highly educated, went to Princeton, has an MBA from Princeton, had no understanding of the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic pre-independence from what they call their Independence Day from Haiti. And it just struck me as being sort of bizarre that very few people have an understanding of their place in the world as it relates to other countries, and thus the people that make up the diaspora in the United States. It's something you sort of touched upon, Dr. Enya, and I want you to elaborate on that. You said on one hand, you were happy to see this reporting. On the other hand, it sort of exposed sort of the weakness that is, and I am in the media, but I can very well understand the indictments that some have made against the US mainstream media and in classrooms, starting with high school straight up to university level, that don't actually go further than just superficialities.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's definitely a product both of the education system, really around the world, but in particular in the United States, as well as the role that the media plays in shaping narratives about other entities, whether they be other countries or people. And so on the one hand, you're not getting the education. And of course, in elementary school, middle school, and high school, you're barely learning about Haiti in particular. You're barely learning about the Black world. And I can recall having pages and pages in our history book, our world history book, on the Greeks, the Romans, the Enlightenment period. And we had about 3 paragraphs dedicated to the entire continent of Africa, and the history, even in the Americas, was started at enslavement, and that was pretty much it. It started enslavement, then went to Martin Luther King, and that was pretty much it, right? And so then when you get to college, it would have to be by your own initiative to select the electives, the elective courses, with this specific interest in that part of the world. Otherwise, you're just not going to get that. And so we have an education system that is, I believe, vested in telling partial stories, which means that people are simply not exposed to the facts. And then you have a media that is largely responsible for shaping the narratives of how we think and believe, what we believe about people and countries. So this repeated narrative of Haiti being the poorest country in the world, of Haiti having bad luck, of Haitians being this and that. And it's the same narrative when you talk about any African country or even down in Central and South America, that media is able to shape these narratives that then fuel policy. And I think it's important to draw that link because the narratives drive policy decisions. They can lay the groundwork for policy decisions. They can set the stage for policy decisions that in this instance, in many instances, have been quite harmful. So it's really both of those things I think are primary, the education system, and then couple that with a media that has such a powerful role in shaping narratives. And I think it's why so many people were just shocked, or this is the first time they had really heard the details about the relationship between Haiti and France and the United States.
Madame Pierre-Louis, you and I exchanged an email about something that you wanted to touch upon, and I really do love the thoughtfulness of your discussion point, because on one hand, we learned, and the world learned, a lot of France's role, the United States' role in the post-revolutionary period of Haiti. But the question that you sort of posed and that you wanted the audience to focus on and to hear about is what happened or what became of these former enslaved individuals who fought this war under these famous generals, Dessalines and Pétion and Christophe, And that ultimately led to the independence of Haiti from what was essentially a world superpower at the time. And what role specifically did they play with regards to the stolen wealth and the payment of indemnity and the spiraling of debt over the course of years? The role of these individuals, we understand the role that France played, we understand the role that the United States played, but what role did these individuals play?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, it is something that I'm highly interested in because I work with a lot of smallholder farmers organizations and working, talking to them, hearing their narrative, and trying to understand their own history is of high interest to me. One second. So I'm going to base my answer on a book by a Haitian historian, Jean-Alix René, and the book is entitled Haïti après l'esclavage, Haiti after slavery. It was published in 2019, and the book won a prize by the Haitian Historical Society. So, contrary to what has been said in many earlier writings, the captives who were enslaved on the plantation system and deprived of all rights had their own concept of freedom. At the birth of independent Haiti, they became the Haitian peasants and went on to create a mode of life in accordance with the freedom they had imagined. First, a confraternity among those who suffered. And he has this expression in French, la confraternité de la souffrance, to recognize one another and to live together with a common understanding of dignity, honor, and respect. Second, an express need to be protected by the state against all assaults on their new status. And third, a sense of freedom meant never having to work for others again. So the rural communities imagine a new political order capable of offering them the space needed to reconstruct their lives as communities who had suffered and who would never again suffer the racism, the terror, and the constant violence of the plantation system. They wanted to build their own identity in their struggle for equality. That is why the peasant resisted the measures taken by the chiefs, whether it's Dessalines, and even before Toussaint Louverture, before independence, Toussaint Louverture had coercive measures to bring them back to the plantation system. And all the others, especially Boyer, at the signature of the ordonnance, to reactivate the plantation workshops and to force them to produce under those conditions. That was not the new life they were longing for, a life of respect and dignity. Their notion of liberty as never having to work for others was incompatible with the return to the plantations demanded by the new rulers in the capitalistic world. Owning the land and working for themselves was not just a matter of economics, but mostly a question of gaining power over their own lives and building a sense of dignity and honor. These three words, respect, dignity, and honor, are constantly talked about in the rural areas. The smallholder farmers obtained their land through their own initiatives, against the will of the powers, either through concession given by the state or through the purchase of land, through the de facto occupation of parcels, or through land given or sold by those who had benefited from large properties distributed by the government. Women also benefited from those forms of property ownership, and that has been largely documented. The signature of the ordonnance under the threat of 500 cannons, and that was the beginning of the so-called gunboat diplomacy that humiliated Haiti throughout the 19th century, The negotiation for the payment of the first installment that led to the double date, the spiral of debts, were met with a lot of popular protest. And this is not known enough. Indeed, when Boyer published in February 1826 the law that made the indemnity a state debt, and in May 1826, when he published the Rural Code that aimed at reinstalling the plantation economy, the resistance of the peasant culminated in major protest. The Rural Code and the other anti-popular measures were meant to impose the return to the plantation economy by forcing the farmers back to the workshops managed by the state or by plantations owners linked to the capitalistic world. Boyer thought that this would produce the resources to pay the debt, but at the same time, these measures confirm and institutionalize once and for all the domination of the urban cities, particularly Port-au-Prince, over the rural areas. The process of subalternation and exclusion became more effective from there on by the adoption of the Napoleonic codes, the creation of the National Guard, the announcement of the Electoral Law of 1834, which was also subordinated to France. The smallholder farmers will play a major role in the rural rebellion in 1844, whose leader, Jean-Jacques Accao, had called l'armée souffrante, the army of the suffering, or l'armée de l'égalité, the army of equality. They were not fighting just for land property, but for their rights as citizens, demanding to have access to education for their children and for social justice. The issue of honor was and remains a priority in their struggle. Those who introduce themselves with honor should be greeted with respect. When you go to a peasant's house, you come and you say honneur, and they respond respect. Any consideration for reparation, restitution, should primarily consider this population of smallholder farmers, the Haitian peasantry, who paid a high price for our independence, but also for providing the agricultural goods, coffee, cocoa, precious lumber that served to pay the spiral of death that also meant the spiral of underdevelopment. And this and there's been many books, Steve Gaillard, a historian, has written many books on the role of coffee in paying debts up to the US occupation of Haiti. So this is really something I wanted to convey in this conversation that shows the importance of the rural communities and the smallholder farmers, and as I said, any kind of process of reparation and restitution, including the diaspora, and also all Afro descents, people from Afro descendants, should consider this particular population first and foremost.
Powerful words there. Professor Casimir, let me get your thoughts on what Madame Pierre-Louis discussed, and also, I guess, the notion of, if the founding fathers, if Pétion and all the founding fathers themselves, as you relate to me, agreed on the sovereignty of the French state and on Saint-Domingue and the validity of the immoral right of conquest, then they also share the rationale for disposing hundreds of thousands of these enslaved individuals. So take me through your thoughts on that notion, and based on what Madame Pierre-Louis said, as we start to chart a path forward.
Thank you. Well, I subscribe to all what she said. I thought I was talking when she was talking. Because every single thing she said.
and I discuss a lot about those issues.
Exactly,
But he adds he adds a very important point. That's the language issue. And what he said about Creole being translated, being also published that the New York Times also publish in Creole is extremely important. So Jean, up to you now.
Merci, Michel. Yes, as Michel said, actually, also, if we want to look toward the future, we must see what is in front of us. And what is in front of us is actually our past, because the future is in our back. We don't know what will come up tomorrow. So we must understand where we come from. Taking from what he said, I want to brush a little bit the context of these opposition and the context also of this constant effort as destituting the Haitian people of their feet. There is a systematic effort to make sure that we are seen not only as fragile and vulnerable, because we are fragile and vulnerable, but as there is a constant effort to ensure that we are seen as devoid of any resources by ourselves. And what is important is to see that. You see, the problem is, first of all, at the very beginning of the 19th century, the opposition between the Haitians and France, the state of Haiti and the state of France. No, but this opposition, no, is the opposition of those who ruled Haiti, our founding fathers in quote, because I put that in quote because we have a heap of founding fathers that have been erased from our history, and they call them the unknown maroons when they know exactly who they were. No, and this group, no, is representing the state of France. How? First of all, France itself, the state of France, is coming out of the primitive accumulation of capital, as the colleague said, of predatory capitalism. No, they are destituting all obstacles without exception. No, and they are attentive to the instrumental reason, that is to say, to their right of conquest. I don't know who gave them this right, but as far as we are concerned, seeing it from our angle, this is simply the right of the strongest, which is, well, you know what it is. In front of those people, no, you have an ascending subordinate world of intermediaries, of bounty hunters, panicked at the idea of a possible offensive return of the French. These are the so-called founding fathers. They are afraid of the French coming back. Both parties, no, are black Jacobins, if you want to call them so, and d'Option Laves, the representative of the state of France, no, both parties control the state. They control the state machinery, they control the state armies. The weaker one of those parties, the subordinates, will blink first. They will offer to purchase Saint-Domingue as the US purchased Louisiana. That is the problem of the debt, and this is this problem that was presented. Now, facing those people, facing this representative of the modern states, now you have in the Caribbean, as Michel put it, a destituted mass of former enslaved whose salvation lies in the tout moun se moun. Their basic value is the total and radical communal equality. This is their basic value, and this is not negotiable. This is what makes a Haitian, that you are born and you have been framed, educated, formatted to believe that tout moun se moun. We are all equal, as Michel put it, honor and respect. This is this group of exploited people by a predatory capitalism. Obviously, there is another group we are not talking to, which is not Caribbean. They are the First Nations of continental America. They have another history, a history that predates by millennia the arrival of Christopher Columbus. But this group of Caribbean people, no, are interested in the reparation of the crimes against humanity committed by the Europeans. much less than the restitution of the debt. You see what I mean? The control, these people are fighting, controlling their private communal life. No, they are destituted, but they are trying to stop the ascent of liberal capitalism and today's artificial intelligence by sticking together. This is our strength, this is our power, this is communal and private life. This is where we produce the way of resisting the impact of the outer world. Therefore, the state of Haiti, the modern state of Haiti, no, is indeed in collusion with the international community, even though you have at the beginning a dissension, no, and this is what Pétion and Boyer wanted to solve through the payment of the debt, through buying the land from the French, no, but this modern state has been, is, and will be against the nation. The Haitian cannot certainly collude, confuse, make one of the state and the nation. The nation has been doing it alone. There is nothing that we have obtained from the state, being in the state of Haiti or the international community, but shackles, you know? And we will continue to fight for our rights, you know, with those who have been using shackles in the outer world. And by those, I don't mean only Black, I mean all those who have been exploited by the system. I mean, this is what is Haiti. This is in this context that we are fighting to find a way through. It is indeed a danger to center our effort on the payment of the debt and forget the reparation of the all the harm they have done to us. If we obtain the payment of the debt, assuming that we do, which I don't think we will ever, but if we obtain that, you know what will happen? We will never have the reparation of the harm we have suffered, because those who had negotiated the debt, who had offered to pay, no, will stay in power forever. This is what I wish to propose to you all, to your reflection. It is not a very optimistic way out of it, no, but it is simply a reflection. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. That does serve as a conundrum in some ways. And so, Dr. Malveaux, both Madame Pierre-Louis and Professor Casimir have looked backwards to allow us to glimpse what might potentially be. As we continue this microscopic look at what occurred before in the past, you cannot look away from the fact that this country, the United States of America, refused to recognize Haiti's independence for some 60 years after independence. It wasn't until the southern states actually seceded and became their own country that President Lincoln finally recognized Haiti. Obviously, the southern states refused to allow the diplomatic efforts of the United States to recognize the country for fear, obviously, that the Black people in this country would learn of Haiti's independence, would learn of Haiti's revolution, be inspired by it, and change the course of American history. So just take us through that, sort of let us peer through the lens of the United States and its policies towards Haiti that have contributed to this, not just the payment of reparations by the enslaved to the slaveholders.
Well, thank you for the question. You know, U.S. Public policy was designed really to maintain, even today, frankly, the oppression and the exploitation of Haiti. When you look at any number of things that have occurred, and you know, the U.S. is very quick to talk about poverty, but they're not so quick to talk about the system of forced labor that was instituted in Haiti after U.S. military invaded Haiti in 1915. Invaded. theoretically because of political instability. But see, we've used political instability for our own purposes. Whenever we choose to decide that we want to intervene in somebody else's country because it's unstable, then we do that. When we look at, as you said, and it's the best great point, 1804, Haiti declares independence. It takes to the 1860s for the United States to recognize the country. Even more than that, the United States was, as you said, the southern states were petrified. But not only the southern states, the United States in general, petrified that these people that they had characterized as ignorant, etc., were able to beat Napoleon. Were able to beat Napoleon, who theoretically was the best general that existed. If you go to Haiti and go up to the Citadel, and it's amazing to go to the Citadel and to see what these people who were supposedly so inept were able to build, using backbreaking labor. And with Christophe, they were afraid that French would come back and that they would invade the Citadel, and that's why they built this monstrous fortress. But the United States was always just literally petrified. The southern states, and the reason why we have been so unfair to Haiti is because white people in the United States, and not only in 1860, but even today, cannot fathom that Black people were independent. It literally frightened them. And because of that fear, they were willing to intervene in Haiti for their own purposes, not to the Monroe Doctrine would have had. The Monroe Doctrine said the United States basically intervenes in our hemisphere, literally for freedom. The Monroe Doctrine would have had us beat France. I got my dates a little bit out of order because Monroe Doctrine came after Haiti's independence, but just in terms of 1915, bringing an army in to maintain independence, that army took $500,000 out of Haiti, took the money out of Haiti and put it in a bank in New York. And as someone said earlier, this is a foundation of, I believe it's Citibank, one of the banks in New York. They just took it. It's never been returned. So in addition to all of that that was taken by France, the United States also had their hand in there. And the forced labor system was designed, again, just as Jim Crow laws were passed after enslavement, forced labor was the Haitian equivalent of that. And so the United States was there. In addition, the United States interfered in laws passed in Haiti that had to do with things like land ownership. And so I just want to read a brief passage of a gentleman who was an Army general in the U.S. Army general who, in the Marines actually, in 1933, he wrote, "During a period, I spent most of my time being a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer, a gangster for capitalism. I helped make Haiti and Cuba a decent place for National City Bank boys to collect revenues. I helped the raping of half a dozen Central American republics for the benefit of Wall Street." This was written in 1933 by a U.S. Marine. These folks were empowered and enabled to go into Haiti and to exploit. And so the changing of the land laws meant it was a land grab. U.S. companies basically took Haitian land. They did it for U.S., I think there was a pineapple company and there was another company, but these companies basically got land grants after the laws were changed. How did laws get changed? U.S. intervention. And then we can fast forward. We can fast forward to the ways that the United States has interfered and the ways that, as the world often opens its purses to Haiti, we have the course of 2010 earthquake that was hard, but there were other earthquakes after that, 2016 and 2021. In those earthquakes, the world responds, but the United States uses its judgment. And I'd ask, of course, Professor Kazmir, especially to correct me if I'm wrong, because I may well be. But the fact is that the whole notion of which NGOs can accept money. So when the Clinton Foundation was collecting money theoretically for Haiti, the question is how much was collected and who got it and how did it change anything? And many people allege that some of it money is still being held because it has not been distributed. And so when you see the kind of poverty that you see in Haiti, when you see the kind of exploitation, my line is always, as an economist, follow the money. I use the line, frankly, in terms of gun violence. We talk about gun violence. Who benefits from gun violence? In a predatory capitalist world, somebody's making money from gun violence. And speaking of guns, many guns from the United States, when you see the violence of the Tata McCoo and others, where they get their guns from? Where did they get their guns from? They didn't purchase them. They essentially were probably imported from the United States for the purpose of sowing instability, because the goal is to maintain this country as unstable, which allows us, the United States, to go in anytime they want to exploit. And the forced labor system has faded out somewhat, but from what I understand, it's still there. So the United States, it has no clean hands. We want to talk about what France owes. We ought to also talk about what the United States owes, because the United States essentially has been a primary aspect of the exploitation, and is something that's just isn't acknowledged. And I would, echo Professor Inya when she talked about what we learned in terms of people don't know this. I mean, this is not in our history books. It's not commonly taught. I mean, when I was in the 5th grade, they had 2 Black people in the history book. One looked like he had escaped from Uncle Ben's rice box, and the other one looked like, Aunt Jemima's next of kin. I mean, literally, and that was it. And our ignorance in the United States is such that I think that same year, I went home one day without homework. My parents are both educators. And my mom said, "Why don't you have any homework?" I said, "Well, Mom, they said that you have to write about the European country that you came from." And then the teacher said, "Except you, Julian." So I guess I didn't come from any European country with a last name like Malveaux. So my mother went back to the school and said to the people, "This girl has French in her, and this in her, and that in her." And then she said, she'll write about all of them. So I had triple homework. But again, we don't know that history of basically the intermingling of the racism, of the exploitation, of what we did to Haiti, not only to Haiti, look at what we did in Cuba, as this general said. And we can look at all over the world, the African continent, where, rich resources. And so why have instability on the African continent? Because then you go in and rip off the stuff. Liberia, why do you have instability in Liberia? And I digress slightly, but just to bring us back to Haiti, the instability in Haiti is a function of US public policy, and we should never forget it.
Amen. Let me just remind everybody, just to speak slowly for our interpreters.
Sorry, Vladimir. I know that was
okay. It's all right. You're passionate. We like the passion. We like the passion. And for you mentioned the U.S. Marine. That was actually Smedley Butler who coined that famous phrase, "gangsters of capitalism." And he, many years after he had spent his formative years serving as an imperialist for the United States, came to understand how he had been used, in essence, by the United States Marines, as is always the case in history, that soldiers are used by the governments that control them. And for those of you interested, my friend Jonathan Katz, who I met many years ago when we were both covering the earthquake in 2010, wrote a great book about Smedley Butler. It's called "Gangsters of Capitalism," using the quote that Smedley Butler called for himself. I urge everybody to pick it up if you want to understand some of the things that Dr. Malveaux is talking about. Most of you probably already know it, but specifically as it relates to the U.S. occupation the U.S. occupation of Haiti, Smedley Butler, and the pilfering of Haiti's wealth, which ended up funding Citibank here in the United States. Most people don't know that. So Dr. Enya, listening to our other panelists, you get the sense, and I think Professor Casimir sort of, in his remarkable remarks, pointed to sort of the I think he said, not optimistic about the notion of any kind of reparation being returned to Haiti, for a variety of reasons that he and Madame Chair Louis mentioned, but also this notion of the money coming from those who would ultimately be stronger. In other words, if they are returning any type of money to Haiti, that still indicates that in some ways, those colonialists, those imperial nations, including France and the United States and Spain and everybody else, have an upper hand on Haiti still.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that would seem to be the case, but it's important to understand the notion of reparations as more broad than the aspect of compensation, and to view reparations, at least for me, as a world building endeavor. It is about the kind of world that we want to live in, the kind of world that is actually foundationally built not on exploitation, not on these axes of power and extraction, but on egalitarianism, on states that are actually equal, on accountability, which is core to the notion of reparations. And when we think about it in those terms, it means that even beyond just the states that are implicated, we have to look at the systems, because there was a global system of capitalism that was built on the backs of Black people. Haiti is a critical part of that story. And so this implies the financial systems. This implies monetary policy and the control of currency. This implies institutions such as the Roman Catholic Church.
Hmm.
Reparations is not just about a debt that is paid, it is about fundamentally dismantling and creating new systems that are not based in harm. And that work is actually taking place. So while it is a huge undertaking, I think there is reason to be optimistic, because we do have folks who are engaged now deeply in the work of transforming those systems, and the notion that each state has a unique claim. Haiti has a unique claim, just like in the U.S., Black folks in the United States have a unique claim. Nigeria has a unique claim. Jamaica, Ghana, all of these places, which is why when we talk about reparations, no one gets a pass. No state gets a pass. France doesn't get a pass. Belgium doesn't get a pass. This is why it has to be a global effort. This is why the global Black diaspora and Africa have to come together, at least on one accord, to acknowledge the fact that reparations are owed, that systems have to be dismantled, and we have to create systems that actually reflect our values, and that we're not going to win this if we compartmentalize, and if we're doing it, everyone trying to just do it on their own. And that is actually happening now, where you're seeing these diaspora groups coming together, where you're seeing even on the continent, people are engaging in these kinds of dialogues where they are actually examining they're examining institutions like the IMF, the World Bank. You're seeing a healthy amount of skepticism about these institutions that seemed untouchable just a few years ago, right? You're seeing a frank talk about states that seemed that they had gotten away with, frankly, the harms of the past. And while the return of stolen artifacts is, it's satisfaction, but it's not the by any stretch does not comprise, it's not reparations. You're seeing some of the main perpetrators being sort of pulled in the direction of having to go down this path, because the demand is there, because you're seeing more so than at least I've ever witnessed, a sort of a unified movement that is building in momentum, and it is global. And I think that in and of itself gives us something to be optimistic about and something to work toward.
I like what you said. No one gets a pass, which is, right on. That is when I think when people think of that, there's always an understanding. Well, this was France's problem, and as you rightfully point out, absolutely not. All these countries had a role to play in that, and all of them are complicit at some level. So then the question, and this is, for everybody to sort of chew on and to offer a response. What would it look like? I mean, if this were ever to happen, if it were ever to even be a point of a feasibility study, let's say France or Spain or England or the United States decided to look at, I'm curious what all of you highly learned and educated people would foresee this process. How would it look? When I was in Haiti, covering the earthquake, the 2010 earthquake, I was struck by something, and this is maybe, I don't know, you tell me if you think I'm off base or on base in the way I think about this. I witnessed doctors, Haitian American doctors from the United States who came to Haiti in the wake of the earthquake to assist. Haiti needed help, and these individuals were doctors. They left some positions that they had in the United States to come and volunteer their time and to help. But I did see a clash of I saw the diaspora doctors shoving aside the local Haitian doctors and saying, okay, I'm a Harvard educated MD. I am the chief of neurosurgery at Harvard Medical School. Out of my way, and let me do what I do. And the Haitian doctor saying, I don't care where you're from. This is Haiti. This isn't your country anymore. This is my hospital. And the whole time, the person is on the ground bleeding to death. And I don't say that to laugh, but I say that as I witnessed this clashing of two people who wanted to help, but the real problem was at their feet. And while they were arguing over how best to proceed, the real root of the problem, in other words, the person who was injured was still suffering. So let me go back to Professor Casimir and then to Madame Pierre-Louis. How would something like this look like, given just something as simple as who should decide who operates on a crush victim in an earthquake? Should it be the now wealthy, young, educated, US educated neurosurgeon who comes back with good intention in his heart to try and help the country of his people, or the person who's been there, who stayed there, could probably have gone to the United States, but decided to stay in Haiti? How would something like this look like, reparations, if we can't even decide who gets to operate on a victim of an earthquake?
Well, I am in a bind because the question, the way you put it, is quite difficult to answer. The problem is not really who can solve what. The problem is that we are, and I am not so sure I am following Dr. Enia. Again, the problem is not the global. The problem is the diversity, and I would say even the pluridiversity. We are different. And actually, we cannot forgive or forget or put aside our diversity. I mean, indeed, there is a problem you have described and you have witnessed the problem. But the fact of the matter is the community takes certain steps, and the individuals, particularly those of us, and I am among them, who studied outside, we tend to enter Haiti as Christ entered, I don't know, Judea or whatever. No, we come as missionary. No, here we solve the problem by community. The community move forward together. No, and this is the problem. It is not a global problem. It is a problem of understanding. And my colleagues before me, I mean, all of them, all five of mentioned that. I mean, we are different. Blacks in Haiti are not blacks in the US. Blacks in Haiti in the US are not Zulu. They are not a Nigerian. They are not, no. We have specific histories, and our history moves certain ways, and we should respect our history if we want to participate in it, We have a problem indeed, and thanks to the US, many Haitians of the diaspora think they are going to solve the problem. We have had 2 or 3, and the deceased one, who think that the US, Haiti is a big enterprise, and they have friends. One of the candidates had, I think, Bush as his friend in Texas, and he want to convert Haiti. No. This is not the way it is. We are different because we have a specific history. And I cannot answer your question, but I wish to point out something that Michelle mentioned. You cannot understand Haiti if you do not understand the role of women in Haiti. Women in Haiti are responsible for the creation of the internal market. I mean, because there was no internal market under the plantation system. Now, the women who created the market, which we call today Madame Sarah, they were the revenders, no, you will not find one in the political system when they are more important than any member of parliament because they create the country, they create our agricultural sovereignty, no, and they maintain that. And this is what the 19th century is. Okay, so the problem of women and their role is not the problem in Haiti of having women in post 50 women. I'm not saying that is good. You may have 50 women member of parliament against 50 men. That's good, but that will not solve the problem. Our problem to make sure that the state respect our creation of gender, because we have of gender. We have created our gender. You should remember that the enslaved had no gender. They were cattle. They could not reproduce in more than 1 century. And from 1791 onward, we created our women, we created our men. We have specific women, we have specific men, they have specific roles, no? And this is what we want the state to respect. It is not the question having females left and right, as many female as many. No, 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 no. This may be true for other countries, not in our country. I don't know if I answer your question, but I said I would better ask help to Michelle.
Okay, Madame Pierre Louis, you take us.
What
You
Jean
take us there.
said about women is so important. It's true because for the first time after independence, they created a private life because there were no,
Yes.
they did not exist legally. They did not exist. Their family did not exist. They created for the first time a private life and were able to reproduce themselves legally and socially. And it is something very new. So we had to create new things after independence. And that is true that it is rather significant to understand how these things work. But I think there's been very important things said both by Dr. Malvo and by Professor Enya.
Enya.
Nia, very important about the way Professor Enya, first the way Dr. Malvo explained so well with brilliance, you know, our relationship to the U.S. Because you see the basis of this relationship. There is an American scholar, Rayford Logan, who wrote a major book about the history of diplomatic relationship between Haiti and the U.S. since we were still a French colony, the role of the U.S. then, because of the proximity of the U.S. to the colony rather than France, the metropole. So when you understand the racism that is at the root of those relationships and how it will, well, of course, as Dr. Malvo said, you know, the recognition came 60 years after our independence, and the way they dealt with with Haiti from there on until the occupation. And the occupation was something very, very important also to understand because the US, when they changed our constitution to make sure that they could own property, which was forbidden since our first constitution in 1805 under the emperor, when they changed it and created the US enterprise and created a new form of forced labor that the peasant resisted and went to war against them, they realized that they could not force that labor. And that's the time when they established the sugar factories, first in Cuba,
Yeah.
that they after the Spanish-American War at the end of the 19th century. So sugar became a very major item, absolutely in demand worldwide. And the US created all those factories, sugar factories, industries in Cuba. So they use Haiti's labor as unskilled labor And that was in their mind. The resistance of Haitians towards the forced labor that the US created in Haiti was a major item in their understanding of how to make Haitian forced unskilled labor throughout the region. They did it with Cuba, then they created the sugar factory in the Dominican Republic, and then that's where we have massive forced labor of Haitian towards the Dominican Republic. And until today, Haitians, based on this racist interpretation of who we are considered to be forced unskilled labor for the rest of the world. And this is something we have to really understand, because that's what happened to us since. That's what is happening now. That's what happened under the Del Rio Bridge. And we have to have some consciousness of what this means to us. And that's also how do we react to this situation. Because it's extremely important that Jean is right. We are different, but we have to find ways to connect. We have to find ways to work with our diaspora. We have to find ways to work toward, I don't know if this reparation, as Dr. Enia said, it means, are we capable of transforming the world the way it is, so that any kind of reparation is meaningful to the people who really deserve it in Haiti. So there is so much to understand in the complexity of our world today and of Haiti today, based on our history, but also on the history of the Caribbean for that matter, and our linkage to Europe for that matter, because Haiti is in the world. Haiti is in the world. Haiti is part of the world. And Haiti played a major role in the world. And this is not understood, and this is not taken into consideration until today. So this is what I can say about, it's not an answer to your question, but it's to show the complexity of things that cannot be, turned into just slogans or anathems. It's much more complex than that, and we have to really dwell and dig into history, and also be prospective. I agree with that. We have to see how we can build our future, how we can understand better the question raised by our diaspora, and that's a condition for us to perhaps get into some phase of understanding that can lead to reparation and restitution. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, all of you are absolutely right. I mean, even to the point where I've had friends and colleagues' eyes go wide when I drop on them what I thought was already, knowledge that everybody would know, that there were Haitians that fought in the American Revolution, and people look like as if my head exploded when I describe that, which is always very surprising to me. We're going to open it up to our audience for some questions. And people have been, this has been your thoughts and your comments and your guidance has inspired a lot of people, as I've been watching the chat throughout the discussion. Just every couple of minutes, there's some very thoughtful responses to the things that you are saying. But I would ask the audience to specifically direct the question to one of our panelists so that so that they can best be suited to answer that. And we'll take it from there. Because there have been, I'm just going to scroll here to see if there was anything that was directed already, but so Dr. Enya, somebody here posted your experience with doing some of the research that you've done, some of the work that you've done on global reparations. You do have some experience in this, working with the African Union, working with the United Nations. Take us through that, and what have you seen, and are you hopeful or dismayed?
I would definitely say that I'm hopeful. I think you kind of have to be hopeful to keep doing this work, in spite of the just the sheer amount of work that it takes. But I'm definitely hopeful, and I say that because there is, I've witnessed a coming together happening around the world. That is, I think, unique to this moment that we're in. The last 3 years have been disruptive in a way that has created space for us to really go beyond barriers of language, of geography. One of the things that's happened in the last couple of years with the pandemic and then with the uprisings in 2020 is you're seeing people beginning to connect, particularly the global Black diaspora connecting in almost unprecedented ways. I've witnessed a lot of that. We have a group that is preparing to be in Accra in a couple of weeks. These are people from around the world, from the Caribbean, from Central and South America, from the continent, representatives from the African Union, people from the United States, from Asia, people of African descent, for the specific topic of reparations and with a specific goal of working toward is there a possibility and can we establish a common position even on the continent around reparations and healing, and how do we heal those relationships between the continent, the African continent, and its diaspora. That work is actually happening. I just was in Rome 2 days ago with another delegation, international in scope, a small delegation of people from around Europe, as well as from the United States, meeting with the Vatican, and actually submitted a presentment to leadership at the Vatican about the role of the Roman Catholic Church as an initiator of the transatlantic slave trade. This is a history that is not well known, similar to what we were talking about with France. That many people just don't know the role of the Catholic Church and the initial papal bulls that were issued that essentially initiated the transatlantic slave trade throughout the world. And so as we move toward this work of reparations, we know that, as I mentioned earlier, no institution gets a pass. And so now you have people coming together globally to say, here is what the role of the Catholic Church, there has to be accountability. And by the way, here's what we're working toward, and there's a responsibility to atone and to be a part of the process of reparations and healing because of the role that the Catholic Church has played. That work is happening right now. Again, this happened just 2 days ago. So
Wow.
there's a lot to be hopeful for, I think, in this moment about the Black world coming together, recognizing our family in South America, recognizing our family in the Caribbean, recognizing our family in Asia, in Southeast Asia. And we're starting to make those connections to say, we're coming each from our own context, but we also recognize the global nature of the harm and the global nature of the repair, right? So it doesn't negate the context that we are each coming from, but it provides an additional mandate to say, if we're going to move this successfully, we have to acknowledge that there's a global system. There are global systems that are responsible for the harm. And to the extent that we can come together to hold those systems accountable and to do the work of creating new and better systems, that's what we have to do. And I think the appetite is there. And that gives me hope in spite of how challenging and how significant this work is.
That actually gives me hope, and I'm very intrigued by this work that you're doing with the Vatican. That is remarkable. This is a question that is for Dr. Malveaux, and excuse me if I get the names wrong. The names are very tiny, and my eyes are not. I guess I'm getting older. My eyes are not what they used to be. But I believe it's Carlene who's asking this of Dr. Malveaux. This is jumping off a little bit of what Dr. Enya was talking about. This person is asking, what can we do as the individual living in the United States to start making noise about this stolen gold? So I guess the question being, what can people here in this country do to bring even more awareness? The New York Times certainly has led the way, at least provided a jumping off point in that this platform that they have means that their reporting was read widely by people who might not be aware of this history at all and now are aware. So what's the next step for somebody here in the United States?
I think the next step is a great question because we're looking at next steps not only in terms of Haiti, but as Dr. Enya has said, in terms of global reparations, we have to look at the basically, racism is the cake. It's an ingredient in the American cake, and U.S. foreign policy is often driven by racism. That's how we end up in the situation we have with Haiti. There are many organizations that are looking at what we should be doing with Haiti, but one of the things I think that should happen is that we should be talking to our legislators. There are now 55 members of the Congressional Black Caucus. Everybody brown ain't down, so they're not all woke, but many of them are willing to start talking about some of these things. Some of them are of Caribbean descent and are open to these kind of things. This year, for the first time in 3 years, the Congressional Black Caucus will meet in person again. They have all these policy forums, but it would be very useful. And you urge your members to have a policy forum where these things can be continue to be discussed more broadly. More than that, we have to educate folks. We read the New York Times. Everybody does not read the New York Times. Unfortunately, some people read the New York Post, and they've never had an article that lasted more than 200 words, I don't think, including the pictures. But in any case, when we talk about in-depth reporting, we need to say to people, this is something you need to read. We in the United States, one of my biggest frustrations with us as Black Americans is that we really don't pay attention to foreign policy. We don't pay attention, unless it's on the front page, Ukraine, Iran, but we don't pay attention. And so we're not paying attention, not only to Haiti. Amara, you just came, I think someone said you had just come from Accra, where the cedi has been devalued yet again. And that raises that cedi is the Ghanaian currency. And that raises all kinds of questions yet again about instability and what global capitalists can do for exploitation. So we need to be aware. Even more than that, though, I think that part of, and I know the Movement for Black Lives, the policy table, has looked at some of these issues. We look at some of them as well in NARC, the National African American Reparations Commission. And I would encourage people to be involved in these kinds of things. Here in the United States, we do have legislation, HR 40, which basically is reparations legislation, introduced every year by John Conyers from 1989 on, now championed by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. There are enough votes for it to pass the House. Of course, not enough to pass the Senate, because the Senate, never mind, but not enough votes to pass the Senate. But President Biden could easily do an executive order to implement HR 40. Similarly, I think that the president could do something to, at the very minimum, study what kind of repair could happen in Haiti, acknowledging the United States role in this country. Again, people, it's beyond irritating. It's frustrating at the way that Haiti has been mischaractered. So again, people talk about the poverty, they talk about the political instability. Where did the political instability come from? Is it inherently unstable, or has the United States been meddling and dabbling in basically in Haitian politics, meddling and dabbling so that they can't develop a stable political system? So President Biden could do something. I mean, but he won't even forgive the student loan, so that's another story. But in any case, we need to use pressure through our organizations. This summer, the NAA has already met, the NAACP. The Urban League is meeting in a week or so. Here's a question. Why aren't our national civil rights organizations, why don't we have Haiti on our radar screen? Why isn't this, every one of these conventions comes out with 10, 12, 20 resolutions? Why isn't Haiti one of those resolutions? These are our people. These are our cousins. As I said, my maternal grandfather was Haitian. These are us. This is us. And there are a couple of people in the chat who talked about basic diasporic togetherness. And I think that's really important as well, because it's easy for us to basically fight each other, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing. In the reparations movement in the United States, for example, you have these people who say you have to prove your slave descendant in order to get reparations. That's crazy. How do you prove that? But more than that, all it means, if you came from the Caribbean, you just got off the boat first. We were all on the same boat and just got off the boat first. So we have to look at the way these global systems have jointly exploited us and the intertwining of our peoples in the diaspora, throughout the diaspora.
Can I say something about that?
Please, please.
Because what you said about educating people is so important. You know, there's a Haitian scholar at Duke University who translated the Declaration of Independence in Creole. And that gave me the idea to translate major documents of our history in Creole and to work with the smallholder farmers so that they understand, for instance, the ordonnance of Charles X or the convention, the US convention during the occupation, which are extremely humiliated documents and that have not been officially translated into Creole. I've done it myself so that they learn from that, from their own position, from where they stand, from their own history. They learn these are the documents that really crucified you. And so when you talk about how to educate, it has to be extremely broad. It is true that the New York Times series has played partly that role, but as you said, not everybody reads the New York Times, even in Creole, because we've been through that. I told even my students, read it in Creole, and well, it's too long, it's too difficult, and so educating, it has to be a major important component of any kind of process that we want to be engaging along those lines.
You know, in terms of international understanding, it would be useful if some of our universities taught Creole. I mean, because we don't teach it, so we don't know it, and it's in danger in many ways of becoming not a missing language, but it's, you know, the European languages, French, Spanish, blah blah, are always elevated. But what if someone could major in Creole? What if more interpreters, more things to bring people together? Because we don't speak the same languages. We have a different kind of a communication. And we need to value Creole the same way that we value Spanish, frankly.
Mm. Okay, so we're getting some questions here, and I'll remind everybody that we have just a few more minutes with our esteemed panelists. So if you have a question specifically for one of the panelists, please put them in the chat. I see a lot of discussion happening, and oftentimes the discussion is centered around something that one of the panelists has said, but I don't see any questions. If you don't have them, that's fine. But if you do, this is the chance now to ask them before we wrap this up. And one of the questions here comes from my good friend, Magali Laguerre-Wilkinson, who's not only a friend, but also a colleague at Paramount. And she asked this, going back to the focal point of this conversation, what's next? So here's a question, perhaps Professor, you want to try to tackle this one. Is the current fragile Haitian government in a position to address what the New York Times has put out? Is the Haitian press able to address the thesis of the New York Times report?
I am the professor?
Yes.
I'm sorry. No, I mean, first of all, I don't even know if we have a Haitian government to start with, okay? So with all due respect, no, and what has been said here about the international community and the US meddling in our system is quite clear. So I don't see them at the height of the present situation. The question we have now is, to my mind, first of all, we must start with the idea that the heart of the problem we have in Haiti start with the creation of Port-au-Prince as the center of Haiti. This was created by the US. And before 1915, Port-au-Prince was a city like any other city, and it was not more important than any other city. Now Port-au-Prince built for 200 or 300,000 people has several millions of people. The country is not made for that. Okay. At the same time, given the centrality of this megapolis, no, we have the problem of the impossibility of having any election made with the development of the WhatsApp, not to speak any other one. The people of Haiti can block the country totally, which leaves the international community absolutely, as we say in Haiti, with 2 feet in one single shoe. They cannot move. They cannot have freedom of expression. So the press is not at the height of this question. What you have happening is that, in fact, in the university, in the media, the language of the people is taking over. I must say that started with a theology of liberation, with the upcoming of Creole. And now the people, for instance, in university, it is not a question of teaching is Creole. It is given. In the media, you cannot speak other language but Creole. There is one or two institutions still speaking French, but normally Creole is controlling the communication between people. What does that mean? That means basically that the way the people is organizing the world, the way the people is understanding the world, this way is taking is becoming hegemonic. I mean, the way the people create and see reality. This is very important, and I will take profit of this opportunity to make sure that I do not create a false impression when I spoke of the diaspora. I must say that the diaspora is very important, is very linked with the Haitian situation. Not only it is important, but what is most important in the relation of the diaspora with Haiti, it is that this relation goes basically through women. I mean, anybody in the diaspora sending money to Haiti will send the money to the mother, to the sister, to any women who distribute the money and take care of the money. The diaspora is part of us, and the question is that we have to recuperate the diaspora. I will end up to say also that the international community, particularly Canada, the US, France, etc., and Brazil, by the way, but particularly those I just mentioned, they are scheming our society. Every single student you have who is capable of doing something, next thing you know, he is employed in the developed countries. They leave us with a set of mediocre people, and the international community is just creating the impossibility for us to self-govern. I mean, this is one of the elements I wanted to point out. This is very important because we are left with the mediocre, no? And you cannot tell your students not to go because they do not have school, for instance, for their children. They don't have means to pursue their normal life. But I wanted to correct any bad impression I could have given in the relation between the diaspora and the situation of the country, even though diverging from your original question.
I don't think there was any at all bad motivations ever taken at all from your comments, but thank you very much. That was very thoughtful. There's a lot of discussion in the chat about Creole as a language. And I'm just going to condense a couple of the things that are being said in the chat and throw that to Dr. Malveaux and Dr. Enya. So people are essentially saying that it's already becoming increasingly difficult, speaking on the subject of Creole and also education, to implement Black US history in schools in this country. It's becoming increasingly a political, it's become weaponized now in politics by politicians. So how can we expect people in this country and in other countries, but specifically in the United States, to join Haiti in this struggle, in this desire for not just recognition, but these reparations? And Amy Willens, who writes about Haiti frequently and is an editor at The Nation, has a very beautiful sentiment here where she says Creole is a freedom language and Spanish is an imperial language, hence the non-valuation of Creole, which is actually fascinating to hear. And I wonder, Dr. Malveaux and Dr. Enya, if there are opportunities there, for example, to make Creole a language that is taught in schools in the United States, but also the challenges that exist given the weaponization of Black history in schools in the United States. Perhaps Dr. Malveaux, you start.
Sure. Well, that question hits home for me as the dean of the College of Ethnic Studies, only the second College of Ethnic Studies in the nation. I mean, there are lots of departments of this or that, but we have a College of Ethnic Studies. And we also often get the question, why do you need ethnic studies or why do you need Black studies? In 16 states, they've actually outlawed the teaching of critical race theory. Well, critical race theory is not being taught K through 12. This is just a way, as you say, of weaponizing, politicizing, and basically elevating ignorance. As an example, Oklahoma was one of the first states to pass this law about not teaching race. Oklahoma, the home of Black Wall Street, that was destroyed in 1921 by rabid white people who basically a governor of Oklahoma said, appointed a commission to figure out why did Black Wall Street burn. And the answer in an official document was too many N-words, and N-word, believe me, was not Negroes. Too many N-words had too much money. So economic envy was driving that in 1921, and aspects of it are driving it now. But how could Oklahoma, the home of Black Wall Street, decide that they don't want to teach anything about race? That means that they're basically cutting off their own history. Similarly true in Texas, where there are all kinds of enslavement roots in the founding of Texas. They don't want to teach that either. Basically, as America becomes browner, white folks become more frightened. And as they become more frightened, they're resisting. You see, the political situation in the United States is so weird. Not only in terms of taking women's bodily autonomy, taking the possibilities of education. In the abortion ruling, Justice Thomas actually wrote, "Privacy. This is not a constitutional right," and he went on to say they could attack, of course, gay marriage, sodomy laws. They want to reinstitute. They could reinstitute sodomy laws and birth control for married people. Now, you note he didn't say interracial marriage because then he might have to get a divorce or something. I don't know. But anyway, what we see our country moving in a direction that's frightening. And the question about how to learn about Haiti when we can't even learn about the United States is a very important question. But the crazy white parents who are taking over school boards, so y'all who are on this call, some of us need to be running for school boards. Some of us need to be going to school board meetings and basically raising these issues. They're enraged and they're activists, but we have to counter their activism, our activism. There are more of us than there are of them, and we need to get ourselves out there and basically deal with that. I'll stop there because I'm sure Professor Anya has something to add, but it really does hit home. It's not going to be a problem in California. It's not going to be a problem in New York, but the most of our country, that middle fiddle area, it is going to be a problem. And a lot of people, you already have an ignorance, and that ignorance is spreading. Just one little quick anecdote. I wrote something about economic envy, about Black Wall Street, Wilmington, 1898, where white folks just took over Wilmington. And the lynchings at Ida B. Wells, with 3 Black men started a grocery store, and white folks were so mad, they basically lynched them. They literally lynched 3 men because they started a grocery store. I submitted this piece to one of our better magazines, where the young man who was editing me was happy to inform me that he went to Harvard. And then he went on to say he did not believe what happened in Wilmington. And I had to say, if you went to Harvard, surely you know Wikipedia at minimum. You must have Google or something like that. Before you give me this ignorance, why don't you just Google it and see, you will find that it did happen. But he said no one ever taught it to him. Harvard is theoretically one of our better universities. I won't say it's the best. I went to MIT. But you could graduate with a degree in history from Harvard and never having heard about Black Wall Street, Wilmington. That's scary.
Mm, that is very scary indeed.
Or about Haiti.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Exactly. Dr. Enya, really quickly before we go for final thoughts, any thoughts on the question that was raised by the audience?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add to what Dr. Malveaux has shared. I think one of the biggest tragedies of colonialism and imperialism was the cultural genocide. And I think it's something that we have to have at the forefront of our minds because it includes, this question of language and the power of language. And so I'm Igbo, and in Nigeria, English became the lingua franca, and you were discouraged from, this is in the colonial days, discouraged from speaking, we were discouraged from speaking our language, right? And so this is part of the harm that has to deal with our identity, who we are, who we think we are, what we know, what we trust, and do we believe that we have everything that we need to build the world that we deserve? And it starts with things like not being able to speak your language, right? Or having to adopt colonial languages. So I understand there's a lot of the discussion around Creole and being able to have opportunities to learn the language and the power of thinking and being. I mean, after all, we know that language is not just the words, it's actually the worldview that is captured in the language. It's fundamental to understanding how we position ourselves in the universe. And so I understand a lot of the enthusiasm around that, but I think it's also why we have to have in the forefront of our minds this holistic view of what colonialism entails, of what exploitation entails, that it is not just the economic component, it's the cultural component. And that cultural component is a method of trying to separate us from who we are so that we have to spend so much energy trying to get back to that point before we can even address the outside forces that we're dealing with. And that's just something that I think we have to have in our minds as this work moves forward, that we have to tap in to our culture, that has always been the place from which we derive our power, and that even as we are engaging globally, that we don't forget that we don't forget who we are, that we do operate in the strength of our language and the strength of our norms. I always, there was, we existed before colonization,
Hmm.
right? We had ways of understanding the world. We had economic systems prior to colonialism. We had spiritual systems. We had education systems prior to colonialism. And there's a responsibility that we have within our own communities to teach that and to reinforce that, because we know that in many countries, even outside of the United States, we can't rely necessarily on the education system to do that. And so there is some work that we end up having to do within our families, within our communities, because we have to make up for the deficiencies of the systems in which we find ourselves.
And of course, the audience is reminding me that Creole is now on Duolingo, which was actually a very significant achievement when it was announced, something that we covered at CBS News when the announcement was made. All right, this has been a fascinating discussion. I want to thank you all. I think we're going to allow for just a quick final thoughts, and I'll just go around the panelists again to get your final thoughts. Anything that you want to say, either about what was discussed or about something that you didn't get a chance to discuss throughout the hour that we were together, hour that we were together. And I'll begin with you, Madame Pierre-Louis.
Thank you. I must thank the organizers and thank you for being such a great moderator. And I learned a lot from the other colleagues. I was very attentive to what they were saying. It met a lot of my own questioning, and about that issue of Creole, I'm so glad that it's being taught at university, in several universities in the US, but we also have to write in Creole. We have to produce more in Creole. And it's true that speaking the language is important, but texts are also extremely important. So there is a lot to be done along those lines. There are things being done. Jean has published most of his books in two languages, which is exceptional practically. So, and at the same time, education in a different way, because even our education system has so many issues, so many problems that you can go through. And again, because of history, it is so costly to poor families that there are so many things that we have to do about our own country, about our own history, about our own people, and we need the support that we can get from our diaspora, from other countries. You know, Haiti is very far from Africa, and for a reason that we still need to analyze, we don't have much relationship with Africa. It is linked to history too. But there is so much to be done along those lines also, to go back and understand better our own links to Africa, our own history with Africa, our own situation as African descendants, uh, what are our relationship to Africa. And the more we will find out, the more we will know about each other, the more we will connect, the more perhaps this idea of understanding better and together how to how actually to force those who stole our own wealth and history, how to force them to repair and restitute what they what what we own actually. So these are my final remarks, and again, thank you for this very remarkable session.
I will echo what you said, Madame Pierre-Louis, that the nearly 3 years that I spent in Nigeria were as eye-opening as to my understanding of Haiti and where my family comes from as the years that I spent in France, understanding the interconnectedness of these countries that seemingly are very different and have very different histories, but all came to play in this little tiny island nation that we call Haiti. That time in West Africa was hugely educational for me, and so I absolutely echo. I wish my dream was to bring my parents to Africa for them to see and to see just a little bit, just for a couple of weeks, what it was that I was able to see, not just in Nigeria, but in Benin. And it was really, really fascinating. Thank you very much for your comments. Professor Casimir, to you.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, let me congratulate you. Let me congratulate the collective who organized this gathering and this discussion and these exchanges. For me, it's very important, and I've learned sufficiently from Professor Enia. I'm very happy to hear that you are Igbo. As you know, Haitians have a particular relation with the Igbos in general.
Yes.
No, and yes, indeed, Professor Malvo and you. Thank you, and thank you to the whole collective. Actually, I wish to end my remarks by making sure that our nations have been created in opposition to the state, being the state colonial or otherwise. I mean, it is all of us who were able to get out of destitution. We did it with the assistance of our community, not with the assistance of the state, with the effort of people who had just nothing to give us except their love, their fight and their clinging to life. This is the only thing that put us forward. It was not the state. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that state, which has always been against the nation, which has always been adamant in erasing what the nation is, I do not really, I will wait 200 years for them to change their mind, because it is 200 years they are destroying me. Actually, this state is presently responsible for the education we're talking about. But it so happened that in the 1950s, we would make a big distinction in Haiti between schooling, which we call instruction, the Ministère de l'Instruction Publique, Minister of Public Schooling, and education. And in Haiti, when a kid is misbehaving, you never said he is mal-educated. You should say he is malappris. He is not learned, he has not learned properly. Because the education, if you say he's not educated, you're offending his parents. Family education, community education is the most important thing. This is where we get self-respect. Therefore, to end up, I must point out that Haiti is not only urban, Haiti is not only the state, Haiti is the majority of the Haitians, and thanks God, we are 90% of this population. No, and same thing also, even though I have been bad talking the French and the US, no, but they are not the state, all of them. And marginals of France or marginals of the US are our brothers and sisters, and we count on them, and we think that with them we can get out of our destitution, but we do not think that we can do that through state institutions. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Dr. Malvo?
First of all, I am just humbled and delighted to be with my esteemed colleagues, especially our Haitian Dr. Casimir and Madam Pierre Louise. Just very honored to be able to learn from them as they bring the real, we're Americans. We need to hear from Haitian people. The second thing I would say is Audre Lorde, the great poet, once said, the master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. So even though we all are talking about education, we must understand how extremely flawed our educational system is, how there is differential access, there differential quality, and our young people, African-American young people, are actively actually being discouraged from higher education. And the focus on community colleges is good, but the focus should be on education and a different kind of education. So back in the day, during the Revolution, not the American Revolution, the Black Panther Revolution, I'm a '60s child. Back in the day, we had Saturday schools. We basically met on Saturdays, read stuff that we weren't reading in class. The great Charles Ogletree used to do Saturday school at Harvard, where he had people come in and just on Saturdays, no credit, just learning. We have to think about the institutions, because even our HBCUs, I'm a former HBCU president, and many people think, well, that's the answer. Not necessarily. The master's tools will not dismantle the master's house. Some of these HBCUs are as colonial as PWIs are. So just saying. So in any case, I think that we have to dig out and dig in to say, what is it that we can do about education? And I think once we do that, we can begin to talk about Haiti. Former Ambassador Paul Altador is a friend. He was here in Washington for a while, and he was encouraging people to visit Haiti, but not Port-au-Prince, some of the other parts of the country that are less urban, but perhaps more beautiful. And he was talking about ways to encourage U.S. tourism there. And I think that there are places in Haiti where we could go and bring our young people so they could see. I mean, if you go to the Citadel, now, unfortunately, I had to ride a mule to get up there. And divas don't do mules. But unfortunately, if I want to go, I had to ride the mule. I walked back down. I wouldn't ride that mule anymore. But in any case, but if you see the Citadel, you understand Haitian brilliance, Haitian resilience, Haitian resistance. And that's what's frightening. But when our young people see that, you can never then again tell them that we are an inferior people. And so we need to teach ourselves, and some of us don't know. So this has been great for me. I've learned as I've listened to my colleagues, and I think we can all learn from each other. That's the bottom line. But we must continue to lift Haiti up. It's our work. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malvo. And yes, that book by Audre Lorde, The Master's Tool, Never Dismantle the Master's House. Excellent, excellent mic drop there. Dr. Enya, you will get the final word. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, I just want to thank you for moderating this discussion, and also thank just this table of brilliance that I'm just still trying to process everything that was shared, and I'm so privileged to be able to share space with you as well as to the Black Collective for convening this conversation. I don't have much to share. I dropped a couple of links in the chat for folks who want to learn more about the convening that we held in Rome this past week and that work, and also the work that's upcoming in Accra, as well as the Movement for Black Lives Reparations platform, just for folks who want to follow and learn more about what's actually happening and the work that we're all doing. I think just from hearing everything that's been said, I feel very um, I feel very hopeful because we are recognizing ourselves in each other. I think it's important for us to recognize that every system in this world was created out of some person or some people's imagination. And those people, as my mother would say, when she's, as Nigerian, she would always ask if someone did something great, did they have two heads? The answer is no, right? The difference is that they actualized their imagination, but that is a creative power that we are all actually born with. And if we recognize that, then it means that every system that exists, new and better systems can be created because we can imagine them. And so sometimes when we talk about monetary policy and the global economic system of capitalism and the harm that has been perpetuated against Black people, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel impossible to overcome and like we should just give up. But actually, the fact that we have these current systems shows us that there's a better way. And our responsibility is to create that better way. What else could we do with the time that we're here? And so I'm encouraged because I feel very connected to my family in Haiti, in Central and South America, in the US, in Asia, as Black people. I mean, I feel that connection. And I think that that feeling is what's going to help bring us even closer together. And it's going to energize us to keep moving forward in this work. So I just want to leave those vibes with everyone this evening. Thank you.
I think we are all feeling those vibes very, very much. Thank you so much, all of you, for just a fascinating discussion. I didn't add anything to it except just move along the pieces and move the discussion along. I thank you all for your illuminating thoughts. And I know that the audience appreciates it because I can see, as I'm sure you can as well, their reactions in the chat, which have been positive up and down the last hour and a half that we've spent together. So let me turn it over to Tamara. Thank you very much for inviting me. It was an honor to be a part of it and happy to take part in these discussions whenever you choose to have them. Over to you, Tamara.
Thank you so much, Vladimir. Wow, wow, wow. I just would like to say a heartfelt thank you to you for being such a gracious moderator. Thank you for your time and your support. I'd like to also thank the panelists for your time, your wisdom shared, Dr. Enya, Dr. Margot, Mrs. Pierre-Louis, and Mr. Casimir. Thank you. I would like to encourage all the participants to partake in our survey so we can know how we did or what you like, if you want to see more of this. So please take some time to participate in the survey. For those of you that would like to see part 1 and part 2 of these great conversations that we've had this month, it will be available on YouTube and the Black Collectives YouTube. It's also in the chat. On behalf of each of these organizations, the 8 organizations, I thank you for saying yes. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your time. I share the sentiments of Dr. Enya. I leave with a sense of gratitude and hope. Where there is unity, there is victory. And so I thank you so much, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks to the collective.